Ben Hogan says if you do the things he teaches in the 5 lessons of golf for 6 months, you will be able to break 80 consistently. Today I'm going to go over exactly what his book says, and I'm going to give you video aids so you can see exactly what you need to do in order to swing the club like Ben Hogan. Let's get started with that grip. All right, first up is the grip on the golf club. You make a crook with your index finger, you rest the golf club in that, and then rest it against the side of your palm. Then you're in great position. All you got to do now is close your grip over that club. And when you do that, you're going to see the pressure is going to lie mainly on these 3 fingers. That's what you want there. You want the back of your hand facing the target. You want the V that your thumb and your index finger make to point up towards your trail eye. Now, once you have your lead hand in place like that, you're going to take your trail hand in. You're going to slide that pinky under the index finger so that your pinky kind of sits and rests in that canal there between the index and the middle finger. Then once that's there, you want your pinky finger and your middle finger. You don't want to come up on the palm here. You want to be up on the finger with that. Your thumb and your index finger on the trail hand are going to do nothing. They're just kind of sitting there hanging out. So once we've gotten into that position, you want to close your right palm over that left thumb, and the V that your thumb and your index finger make with that trail hand are going to point right to the middle of your chin. Once you do that, you're in position with your grip, and we can move on to the next step, which is your stance and your posture. So let's talk about stance and posture. First thing Ben Hogan talks about is that your stance and your posture is going to set up the swing to balance your power and your control. You need both of those to have a successful golf swing. So the first thing we always do is align our face to our target. Once we have our face lined up to that target, that's when we're going to set up our body. Every single club, every single swing, he wants that ball to be just inside your lead foot. Your trail foot is going to be 90 degrees to the target. Your lead foot is going to be a quarter turn open. And what he means by that, this would be 90 degrees. So we cut that in half, that's 45 degrees. Cut it half again, that's 22 degrees. That's a quarter turn open to the target. That's how the lead foot is set up to the ball every time. Now the trail foot is also always going to be 90-degree angle to the ball, but based on what club you're using, that's going to move. So he says shoulder width apart with a 5-iron. As you get shorter clubs, your trail foot's going to come closer to your lead foot. It's also going to come closer to the ball. Now, when you get closer to the ball and open up your stance like that, you're going to lose a little power, but it helps you have a lot more control on those wedge shots, which is when you really need it. And then same thing from the 5-iron shoulder width. When you're getting longer clubs, you're also going to go further from your lead foot, and you're going to go further from the ball. So that trail foot gets further and further away. And that way you do the same swing every time, you're going to get a straight shot every time. So that's what we want to do with our feet. Next up, we're going to talk about our arms. First thing he talks about is how to generate the most speed and power with your arms. And the way you do that isn't by swinging hard with your arms, it's by creating space. So what that means is one of your arms should be fully extended throughout the entire golf swing. That creates the biggest arc and the most speed. So at address and in the backswing, your left arm is going to be fully extended. As you come down and come into impact, your left arm's still fully extended, your right arm's just slightly bent. Just after impact, both arms fully extended. Then as you follow through, your left arm breaks, but your right arm's going to stay fully extended. Those extended arms are going to create that wide arc and generate a lot more power. After that, Ben Hogan talks about how your upper arms and forearms should be. So upper arms are going to be glued tight against your chest. You want them snug there. And your lower arms are also going to be as close together as you can get them. Now you want your left elbow pointing towards your left hip and your right elbow pointing towards your right hip. It's not going to feel super relaxed, but that's a position, he calls it active relaxation. It's in a position where you can feel that you're going to be able to generate a lot of power with that golf swing. So that's where your arms need to be doing. Next up, Ben Hogan talks about our knees. When we're trying to get down to that ball, we don't want to bend over our back to get to it. We want to bend our knees to get to it. Your back stays erect, your knees just bend, get you down to the ball, get you into position. So during our swing, our knees are going to be pointed in towards each other. Think of your knees as being married to each other. They should always be striving to get closer to the other one. So in that backswing, that lead knee kind of comes back towards the trail knee. In the downswing, the trail knee is kind of moving up towards that lead knee. They're married, they stick together. That's going to help you out a lot. Now in that backswing, when you're coiling up on that trail leg, you'll notice the leg angle relative to the ground isn't really changing all that much. We don't want that thing to sway or move. We just want to coil up to create some tension, create some potential energy so you can generate power as you come on your downswing with that right knee. Ben Hogan said a lot of the pros he played with said that when they played their best rounds, it was when their legs were in sync. So it's really important to focus on getting those legs right, getting them feeling comfortable and proper and keeping those knees married. When you do that, you're well on your way. Okay, that's knees. Let's go over the rest of the body. The last few things he goes over in terms of stance and posture. But first off, you want to stay balanced. You want to feel like you're balanced from your lead foot to your trail foot. You want to feel balanced from your toes to your heels, just on top of your feet and balanced. Now that weight should be primarily dispersed over your heels. Your butt should feel kind of heavy over your heels. And your legs should feel kind of springy, like ready for action. All right, that's everything for stance and posture. Let's move on to lesson 3, which is the first part of the swing, or the backswing. Now, the first thing he talks about is using your inside muscles. So inside of your arm muscles, inside of your leg muscles, all the way from your ankle up to your inner thighs. It should all be the inner muscles. Those guide the swing. Those help you stay more controlled, get you the power you need. Next up, he talks about the waggle. He talks about how the waggle is very underrated in the golf swing, and the purpose of the waggle, which is to give you confidence that you're doing the right thing. So he says your hands should go a couple inches ahead of the ball. Your right elbow goes back into that right hip, and your left arm kind of comes away, and that kind of sees the club path that you want to hit it. Once you got that lined up, you're going to have a lot more confidence in your full swing. He also talks about in the waggle, your shoulders shouldn't really move. It's just getting that club path where you want it to go. And then once you start the full backswing, it's going to be exactly like that was, except for instead of just the waggle with your hands and your arms, you're going to add your shoulders to that. And that's going to help you have, again, confidence that you're coming into the ball exactly how you want to. Now, the second thing he talks about is a plane. So from the golf ball to the top of your shoulders, imagine there's a square pane of glass. And with that pane of glass, just imagine your head's poking out on top of it. So it's just going right through your neck, sitting on top of your shoulders. Throughout your entire swing, your arms should follow that pane of glass. If at any time your arms break up through the pane of glass or come down below the pane of glass, that's going to result in a bad shot. Now, especially, he says, if you come above that pane of glass, that's going to result in a two-way miss, because either you're going to come out over the top, slice it out to the right, or you're going to come over the top and just pull it out to the left. Either way, it's inconsistent, it's a two-way miss, and you're not going to be able to play well if you have a two-way miss. So once you have that plane dialed in, the other important part of the backswing is going to be creating tension. And you do that with two things. The first one we already talked about, which is coiling up that trail leg, like you're driving a coil into the ground on that back leg. But the other one, and the most important one for generating power, is on that backswing, you're going to start with your hands, arms, and shoulders. Your hips don't move at first until your hands are about at your waist. Once you get to that point, your shoulders are going to turn your hips, and you don't want to intentionally overturn your hips. That loses the tension. We want to maintain some tension. We want the shoulders to create that tension. So Ben Hogan says if your back is not facing the target, that's not a good backswing. So you need to really rotate those shoulders so your back's facing the target. You can feel the tension in those hips. That's what's going to be creating all of the power as you come into your downswing. So as you bring that backswing back, rotate those shoulders back so your back's facing the target, and so you can feel the tension between your hips and your shoulders, and you're still on that plane we talked about between the golf ball and your shoulders. Now you're ready for part 2 of the swing, which is the downswing and the follow through. Let's check it out. All right, now we're moving on to the second part of the swing, which is the downswing. Ben Hogan talks a lot about how each phase of the swing builds on the last phase. So before we can get the stance right, we have to have our grip right. Before we can get the backswing right, we have to have our stance right. Before we can get our downswing right, we got to have the backswing right. So make sure we've got those first 3 things all in order before we try to work on the downswing. With the downswing, what we're doing, if you remembered with the backswing, we built all that tension, right? So our shoulders are super rotated. We can feel the tension in our hips. He said the biggest downfall a lot of golfers have is they try to start the swing with their hands and arms and shoulders, and that just gets everything out of sync, and no timing's right, no power's stored up, just creates a mess of problems. Once we're in that backswing, we've created that tension. What you want to do is start with your hips. Now when you start with your hips, that's automatically taking your arms clear down here to your waist. If you do that right, you can feel the power stored up in your forearms ready to release and just explode through the ball. As you do explode through the ball, he recommends swinging as hard as you can with your right arm and your left arm. If you've done everything right up to this point to get into that right position, it's going to stay in position, which means you can really just unload, let it go, and the ball's going to go where you want it to go. Now, over and over and over again, he says, start with your hips, start with your hips, start the downswing with your hips. Make sure your downswing starts with your hips. It is mission critical. If you don't do that, your swing's not going to be controllable. It's not going to be consistent. You're going to be spraying the ball everywhere. So once you've got that backswing all set up just right, practice just over and over, initiating the swing with those hips. Rotate those hips. A really good visual he gives for this. So let's say I'm standing right here. Pretend there's an elastic band attached to my waist, attached to the wall behind me. When I'm in that backswing position, I can feel I'm kind of added resistance to that. So starting with my hips means I'm letting that elastic band pull that lead hip back towards the wall. That's where all your power is coming from, is just letting those hips turn. He says it's impossible to turn those hips too fast. And that visual really helps me on the course when I'm doing this. Is you built the tension between your shoulders and your hips. You're imagining that elastic band between your hip and the wall, and then you just let it go. Coiled up, pushed out. You're going to get a lot of power, and you'll be surprised how much control you have with that power. You're in position. You've done everything else to get into position. Just start that downswing with your hips and good things are going to happen. After you've got that focus of starting with your hips nailed, the other thing he talks about is just before impact, you should be supinating your left wrist. So supinating is like when you turn your hand to cup up a bowl of soup. That's supinating. If you're not supinating like that, you're going to be spraying a lot of shots out to the right. So you should, every single time you're coming into impact, you should be supinating that left wrist. And you can see here how my left wrist bone is the furthest thing, closest thing to the target. You got to do that every time you're striking the ball. All right, let's move on. Lesson 5, summary. All right, Ben Hogan's 5th lesson in the book is a complete summary of all the previous lessons, which is exactly what we've done in this video. You're now equipped with all 5 of Ben Hogan's lessons, and you didn't even have to read a book to get them. These lessons will help you get better at golf. If you take the time to practice these, Ben Hogan says in 6 months you can be breaking 80 consistently. So get out there, focus on these lessons. Add to that my perfect practice plan, which you can watch up here, and you're gonna become a better golfer really fast. If you like this content I'm providing to help you get better at golf, please hit that subscribe, like the video, let me know what you like about it, and I'll see you next time.